Let me tell you about the day every combine on Harlan County's largest grain cooperative went silent, and one woman nobody had bothered to ask finished the harvest alone. It was the third week of October, the kind of October that makes Kansas farmers nervous. The sky had been doing that thing it does in late fall, that slow bruise building on the western horizon, moving like it has all the time in the world and absolutely none of it. The corn was ready, had been ready for 4 days. Every farmer in the Millbrook Co-op knew that window was closing, and every farmer in the Millbrook Co-op had spent the better part of 2 seasons upgrading to the new AutoHarvest Pro integration, a satellite-linked precision harvesting system that coordinated yield mapping, moisture sensing, and GPS-guided row tracking across an entire operation simultaneously. The company rep had called it the last piece of equipment you'll ever need to understand. He had said that with a straight face. Eugene Darby was the co-op manager, 44 years old, built like a man who had spent exactly half his life behind a desk and the other half wishing he hadn't. He ran the operation out of a converted equipment shed on the north edge of town, and he took considerable pride in the fact that Millbrook had gone from a mid-tier regional co-op to something people in Wichita actually talked about. A lot of that transformation had happened on paper. Yield maps, efficiency metrics, satellite imagery overlays. Eugene understood these things the way a man understands a language he learned from a textbook, well enough to pass the test, not well enough to dream in it. That Tuesday morning he stood in the parking lot outside the shed, watching 6 combines sit completely still in the staging field, engines idling, operators staring at their screens. The AutoHarvest system had stopped communicating, not crashed exactly. It was still running, still showing dashboards, still blinking its little green indicators, but it had lost the GPS correction signal that the entire precision guidance system depended on. Without it, the automatic row tracking wouldn't engage. Company policy, which had been written into the operator agreement in language that nobody had read carefully, required that harvesting only proceed with full system confirmation active. Liability reasons, insurance reasons, the kind of reasons that sound very reasonable until you are standing in a Kansas parking lot, watching a bruise spread across the western sky. Eugene had been on the phone for 40 minutes. The satellite provider's support line had him on hold. The AutoHarvest regional technician, a young man named Derek who wore a company polo and spoke with the confidence of someone who had never personally lost a crop, had driven out and was currently kneeling beside one of the combines with a laptop, doing something that looked important and was accomplishing nothing. Signal should restore within the next 2 to 4 hours, Derek said, not looking up. 2 to 4 hours, Eugene repeated. Possibly sooner. There's atmospheric interference affecting the correction network across the central region. It's not isolated to you. The storm doesn't care if it's isolated to me. Derek looked up at him. Mr. Darby, the system is functioning correctly. It's a signal dependency issue. We don't recommend proceeding without full confirmation active. You have to understand what it means to lose a harvest window in late October in Kansas. We're not talking about inconvenience. We're not talking about a delayed shipment or a rescheduled meeting. We're talking about the difference between a year that works and a year that breaks something, a loan payment, a partnership, sometimes a marriage. Eugene knew this. Every man in that staging field knew this. And they were all standing there looking at laptops and phones because that was what the system told them to do. That was when Beverly Crane pulled into the lot. Beverly Crane was 57 years old and drove a 1994 Ford F-250 that had been the same shade of faded red for as long as anyone could remember. She farmed 340 acres on the south end of the county, the old Crane family ground, which her father had worked before her and which she had worked since she was old enough to sit in a cab without a booster seat. She was not a Millbrook Co-op member. She had been invited to join twice, and both times she had declined in the polite but final way of a person who has thought it through and doesn't need to think about it again. She had come to borrow a hydraulic fitting from Eugene, something she'd called ahead about, something completely unrelated to the drama currently unfolding in the staging field. She parked, got out, took one look at the row of idling combines and the cluster of men staring at screens, and said, GPS? Eugene looked at her. How did you? That's the only thing that stops 6 machines at once. She pulled her jacket tighter. How long? They're saying 2 to 4 hours. Beverly looked at the sky. She didn't say anything for a moment. She had that farmer's habit of reading the horizon the way other people read text messages, automatically, constantly, with an accuracy that comes from 1,000 repetitions of being wrong and learning from it. You got maybe 90 minutes of good working light and dry air, she said. After that, the moisture content in the standing corn goes up as the temperature drops, and you'll be fighting test weight all night, even if the signal comes back. Derek looked over at her. The system will restore. This is a known atmospheric event. I'm sure it will, Beverly said. She wasn't being rude, she was being precise, which some people confuse for rudeness. I'm talking about whether it restores in time to matter. She got her hydraulic fitting from the parts shelf in the shed, said goodbye to Eugene, and walked back to her truck. It was Eugene who stopped her. He was not entirely sure why. Something about the way she had looked at the sky, not with panic, not with resignation, but with the focused calm of a person doing a calculation. Beverly, he said, you running your own ground this week? Finished it Saturday. He paused. How? She stopped walking, turned around. How did I harvest my corn? You don't run AutoHarvest. You don't have the integration. No, she said. I run a 2003 Case IH. I use a foam marker on the road divider, and I watch my corn head. The staging field was quiet enough that several of the operators had drifted over and were listening without quite admitting they were listening. That works, one of them said. His name was Todd, and he had been farming for 11 years, all of it with guidance systems of one kind or another. Beverly looked at him with an expression that was not unkind. It's how corn got harvested for about 60 years before any of this existed, she said. But the row spacing, you watch your overlap. You pull a foam marker when you're cutting a new pass. You know what your head width is, and you count your rows. It's not complicated. She paused. It's not fast either, but it works. There was a silence in the staging field then that had a specific quality to it, the silence of people reconsidering something they thought they already understood. Derek stood up from his laptop. Our recommendation is to wait for signal restoration. Harvesting without GPS confirmation creates yield mapping gaps that affect your data integrity going forward. Beverly turned toward him slowly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Son, she said, if that corn is still standing in this field when that storm comes through, your data integrity is going to be the least of anybody's problems. Derek opened his mouth, closed it. Eugene looked at the sky again. Then he looked at Beverly. Would you be willing to show them? Have you ever watched someone step into a situation they didn't ask for and handle it with a kind of quiet competence that makes everything around them look smaller by comparison? That is what happened in that staging field on that Tuesday morning. Beverly Crane did not give a speech. She did not lecture anyone about the old ways or the new ways or what farming used to mean. She walked to the nearest. I keep thinking about the moment Beverly walked back to her truck, hydraulic fitting in hand, job done, no drama, while 6 combine operators stood in a parking lot waiting for a satellite to tell them it was okay to work. That image stays with me. Not because it's funny, though there's something darkly funny about it. It stays because I've been one of those people standing in the lot. Maybe not on a farm, maybe not with a combine, but I've been in rooms where the system went down and everyone looked at each other and nobody knew what to do next, because the system had always done that part, and somewhere along the way we'd quietly stopped learning it ourselves. Beverly didn't set out to prove anything that Tuesday. She came for a fitting. She read the sky the way she'd read it for 30 years, said what she saw plainly, and when Eugene asked her to stay, she stayed. That's the character part, the part that can't be downloaded. She could have driven home. Nobody would have blamed her. The co-op wasn't hers to save, but she understood, without making a speech about it, that the right thing and the useful thing were the same thing that morning, and she did it without requiring recognition first. What I find worth sitting with is the cause and the effect of the whole situation. The co-op didn't fail because the technology was bad. The auto-harvest system probably works fine 99 days out of 100. The failure was upstream of the signal outage. It was the slow, invisible decision, made over years, made comfortably, made with good intentions, to stop teaching people how to do the thing the technology was supposed to help them do better. Once you do that long enough, you don't have operators anymore. You have monitors. And monitors are only as useful as the system they're watching. Beverly was an operator. Old school, full sense of the word. She knew her head width. She knew her row count. She knew her row count. She knew what her engine sounded like when the stalks were carrying too much moisture. That knowledge lived in her body, not in a manual, and it accumulated because she had paid attention across decades without ever being told the attention was optional. That's the part I want to carry forward. Not nostalgia for old equipment, not suspicion of technology, just the commitment to understanding the thing you depend on, really understanding it, down to the layer where the system isn't, so that when the signal drops, your hands still know what to do. There's a kind of intelligence that only comes from doing the hard version of a task long enough that it becomes instinct. Beverly had it. Todd found the edge of it that afternoon when his hands had to figure out the return pass without a screen telling him where to go. He came back with his rows straight and something had shifted in him. That shift is the thing worth protecting. Grit without knowledge is just stubbornness. Knowledge without the willingness to act on it under pressure is just trivia. Beverly had both, and she had the integrity not to withhold them when someone needed them. That combination, knowing the thing, having the nerve to use it, and being honest enough to share it, is rarer than it should be. I think about those 12 operators who showed up on that cold November Saturday. They didn't have to come. The season was over. Nobody was grading them. They came because something had cracked open in them on that Tuesday in October, some awareness that they had been operating with a gap they hadn't noticed before, and they wanted to close it. That impulse, the willingness to admit you don't know something and then go learn it anyway, might be the most important thing Beverly modeled. Not the foam marker, not the row count, the willingness,